Hey there, special educators. Welcome to Autism Academy 360, a podcast to making your job as special education teachers easier. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Abby, a behavior specialist. And together, we have over 25 years of special education experience.
And I'm a veteran autism teacher. We both are passionate about empowering you with practical teaching strategies and actionable tips and tricks that will help you thrive in your role.
Whether you're a seasoned educator looking for fresh insights, a newbie navigating your first classroom, or a parent of a neurodivergent child, this podcast is your go-to resource for all things autism.
So let's get started with today's episode. Hey there, special educators, and welcome back to another episode of Autism Academy 360. I'm your host, Lisa Hollady, and today we're going to be talking about 5 tips for using visual supports in the classroom. How do you implement visual supports in the classroom? Teachers in special ed can sometimes feel really overwhelmed with using visual supports with students. Visual supports are there to do just that, right? Support. The purpose of using them with students in special education is to enhance their day. You should find that using visuals will increase communication, help with those transitions, and really make the school day run smoother. I've seen so many different classrooms where I walk in and they're just trying to do way too many visual supports. You kind of can't get into that trap where you feel like you have to use every single visual that you find on TPT. That's not the case. You do not have to have all the visual supports. You also want to make sure that your classroom is not so cluttered and easy to look at. You want to make sure that you're using visual supports and it's not overwhelming for students. So one time I walked into the classroom and on the student's desk was a visual schedule, behavior reminders, a token board system, a social story hanging off the side. Around the student were more visual supports to help him find things in the class. It just was way too much, and the student did not know what to do with all of these different visual supports. And so what I want to say is if you're going to use visual supports, make sure whatever you choose, you are going to use frequently and consistently with that student. Because say you're like, I have this really awesome token board and it just sits on the student's desk and they never really use it, or they don't use it with fidelity, then why even have it out? Put all of the visual supports that you are not using away. So let's talk a little bit about what the benefits are to using these visuals for children with special needs. So one of the most important things you can do in your classroom is using these because they help provide structure and routine. They help avoid that frustration that a student might have. It improves their overall understanding, and it even gives them opportunities to communicate with others. And I've been able to be in a lot of self-contained classrooms where I've seen this happen. Even in general education classrooms, you will typically see visuals on the wall with maybe schedules or routines. This eliminates the element of surprise for children, showing them what's coming next. And I would say that's the biggest thing, especially students on the autism spectrum, is they need to know what is happening next. So let's think about a kindergartner who's super hungry for lunch at the beginning of the school year and is still maybe getting used to that full day. However, it's math time and the teacher needs that kindergartner to complete that activity. If there's a visual schedule, the teacher can remind the students that first math, then lunch comes next, and they physically show them that schedule instead of just telling them with words like, you need to wait. Math's almost done. Lunch is coming. Lunch is coming. They need to be able to see it, right? This can help to increase that child's motivation and also increase their independence. So they stop asking when is lunch, right? This can also avoid a huge power struggle situation, which I've seen happen a lot in special education classrooms. So using visual supports for students with autism is just best practice. Visuals can increase that independence. It can decrease that transition difficulties that they might be having. It increases those positive behaviors. It really provides clear expectations. Like first we're doing morning meeting, then math, then lunch, right? There's no arguing of the schedule. This increases their motivation and also gives them opportunities for communication. So, for example, I had a student who was not quite ready, or we were just trying to get a trial device in for that AAC communication. He did not have a PEC system set up. He had no way to communicate. And so in the beginning of the year, those first few weeks that we had him, he was a second grader from another district, and he still had no means to communicate. However, I had visual supports around our neck on a lanyard. Each adult had that. And this child would go from person to person, looking through all of his visual supports to communicate his wants and needs with us, which I thought was super highly effective. So we use things like little symbols or social stories. Sometimes we even had task boxes out that had little icons in them, or we would make a little binder book for that student. So this reason alone is why we use visual supports with students with autism, and it's so highly effective. So how do you even start with visual supports in the classroom? If you just plan to slap a visual schedule up on the wall and call it a day, you won't see any changes in student behavior, communication, social skills, anything. Believe it or not, students actually need to be taught and trained how to use any visuals that you give them to support them in this classroom. These visual supports can be used for all parts of the student's day. They can be used for a whole group, small group. They can be used for making choices. They can be used during special areas. They can be used for positive reinforcement. 5 of my very favorite visual supports are as follows. Okay, number 1, you're going to want to start with an individual daily visual schedule, right? If you're brand new to special education or brand new to using visuals at all, you want to start with that visual schedule. If you do not have a schedule, I will link them in the show notes. I have them already color-coded for you in my TPT store or my website store that you can grab. You want to make sure that they start the year with these. You can have it in a binder in their desk. You can have it posted on the wall. You can have it on a shelf. You can have it on their desk, but they need access to it. So as you finish different activities throughout the day, you're going to want to make sure that the student is checking that and making sure that it's done. I have had other podcast episodes in the past that you can go back and listen to all about visual schedules. Let's talk about number 2, using just generic visuals. So having some generic visual printed and laminated and ready to go at the beginning of the year will be super beneficial. However, don't put them all out in front of the students at once. You want to make sure that you have them at the ready, but you want to make sure that you are teaching the student every time you pull them out. So if you're using first then boards, you can always teach the student how to use them and then give it to them. You can use yes or no cards. You can use break cards. Maybe you have a student who's completely tearing up the classroom and you want to teach them to learn to say, I need a break. Use those break cards. Maybe you need stop signs. Maybe you need feeling cards. Maybe you have just the visual lanyard around your neck. Maybe you have calming books, whatever the generic visuals are. Another great visual support that I love to use is using token boards. So token economies have become one of my very favorite tools that I use in special education and works wonders. The ones that I use already have the behavior expectations right on the token board. The students are able to work for whatever that they need and get that reinforcer at the end. I always have these printed and ready to go, especially any new kids that I have coming in. They can just go and pick whatever one that they like and get started right away. The last thing I want to talk about is using visual choice boards. So when students are resistant about something in their day, It's typically because they feel they had no choice or say in it. All day long, we are making choices for these students, right? We are in their faces, giving them directions all of the time. So giving students as many choices as we possibly can throughout the day, super helpful. So even if you're asking the students to line up, you say, okay, do you want to be in the front or in the back? Do you want to stand next to me on my left-hand side or my right-hand side? If they're doing schoolwork, you can say, do you want to work with a pencil or a crayon? We want to give them as many choices as possible. So using the visual supports, I like to give them choice boards. Showing a student a visual choice board and asking them what they would like to do after it's completed. So this kind of reinforcement choices. So I'll say, what do you want to work for? And they can easily pick between bubbles or trampoline or playing Uno or whatever it is that they want to work for. Sometimes I use a choice board for whatever center that they're going to, especially if you're in the younger grades. So if they're going to a dramatic play station, what do you want to play with? Do you want to play with the dolls or do you want to play with the grocery store? If they are going to the sensory room, I have a sensory choice board there. Do you want to play with a trampoline or the therapy swing, the yoga ball, the kinetic sand, or what have you? Making as many visual choices as possible is super helpful for students. So really having a lot of visual supports in place can make or break your school year. Using these visuals in an autism or special education classroom is really the best way to set up students for success. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Autism Academy 360. We hope that you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead.
Before you go, don't forget to hit that follow button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review.
Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and most importantly, stay connected. We'll catch you in the next episode.